Hey there, Blue Table fans. A fan emailed me and he said, why don't you do a review? By the way, this is Cody M. So he says, why don't you do a review of the different games that are out there and give your input, and also go around and ask everybody at the studio what games are of interest to them. Now, this question is awesome, and let me tell you why. Because it means people are wondering what they should get into. We were talking about that at our last promotions meeting. I had a bit of an insight into it, which is to get into a game, there's an investment. There's a money investment. There is to buy your models. There is a money investment to buy the equipment needed to assemble and paint your models to get, because you're still not to a finished product, a usable product. And nice try, printer. So there's a time investment to learn the game, and then there's a time investment to actually play the game. So like, let's say you have 3 hours of free time to go spend on your hobbies per week. Oh my gosh, you do not have 90 hours to go paint an army with 150 figures in it. So, wow, you better be careful with your spare time. So, I've picked some games. These are what I consider to be the major contenders, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about them and give you my personal opinion. Infinity is put out by a company called Corvus Belli. They are located in Spain. We've had a very good experience getting models directly from them. So if you have an army painted by us, you're going to have a good fill rate. As far as ordering them from other places, I really don't know anything about it. Infinity has 2 rule books, to my knowledge. They have Infinity 2nd edition, and quite frankly, I do not know how long these guys have been in business. I'm going to guess 6 to 10 years. I do remember one of their lines, War Crow, was out when I first started business in 2004. So they've been in business at least 8 years. And that's something to look for if you're going to invest in a miniatures battles game. And I mean, you're going to live so long. So time's precious. So you have a life, but you also have what I call your hobby life, which is much, much, much shorter. Which is all the time you're going to be able to spend on your hobbies, things that you really would rather be doing. So you got to be careful. So let me tell you the good and the bad about Infinity. The figures are gorgeous. There isn't much pageantry to the game, like you don't have giant armies. That can be a plus. They don't have big models. They have boutique type models that are each one is like this gorgeous work of art. To play the game, as you've seen, it only takes like 8 figures. So it's pretty low overhead. If you have us do your Infinity army, I'd go turbo. But we have spreadsheets for all of it. In fact, we've been revamping our spreadsheets. And don't let the spreadsheet stop you, by the way. You can still just send a list, say, give me a quote off of this list that I emailed you. But we've started making them so they have drop-down menus for levels. So isn't that nice? And they've been revamped and updated, and everything's wonderful. So anyway, back to Infinity. And I was going to say we have a la carte pricing sheets for Infinity in the downloads section of bluetablepainting.com. And so, yeah, Infinity, gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous artwork in it. Let me find some. They have great videos explaining how to play the game. This is kind of an anime thing, so if you've seen Ghost in the Shell, that's kind of what you're going to get. The artwork in it is spectacular. The models are spectacular. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I have heard the complaint that it's hard to understand the rules, but, you know, they do have some good online tutorials. And Infinity actually is kind of part role-playing game. Like, each of your guys has like skills. When I was reading the rule book, trying to understand it at first, I was like, wow, this is kind of like an RPG. And you also have to consider, this is it. Like, this is all the information on all the armies. And that is why the rules seem complicated. Well, but like for 40K, for example, if you put all the rules and all the armies together, it'd be a like 8 inches thick. And that's getting rid of the fluff. That's just the rule part. Yeah, it would be pretty brutal. So anyway, Infinity, highly recommend. And the beauty of Infinity is it's easy to get into this. You could easily just buy 2 armies for you and a friend, you and a guest or a friend to play. So Infinity, gotta highly recommend it. Although I have not played yet. Poor shame. But you've seen the guys play a lot. Next is War Machine and Hordes. All I have is the Hordes rulebook. They have a ton of rulebooks out. In fact, take a look over there. I don't know if I'm pointing that the right direction. So yeah, they have a lot of rule books out. They are by a company called Privateer Press. They've been around for at least 10 years. I think it was 2002. I went to my game shop and kind of saw this new game come out. I played it. I liked it a lot. It is pretty low model count, not as low as Infinity, but you probably need 20 to 40 figures per side for your average game. That's your model count. So Infinity is probably 6 to 15 figures, and 20 to 40 for Hordes. And the artwork is ridiculous. I mean, it's lavish. It's like, GW better catch up, is all I have to say. And the rules system is really cool. As you guys know, my only complaint with War Machine and Hordes is the named characters. Other than that, everything is awesome about this game. It's really, really neat. Some customization would be nice, but they handled customization a little bit differently in this. They did it where you actually get models in a unit to customize it, to give it different powers. So there's some more art from that. And it's got great support, new releases every month. It's just, I can't say enough good things about it. You really could get a low model count like Infinity and still have a really good time with this game. So War Machine and Hordes, and it is the same game. The systems are the same, the world backgrounds are the same. A lot of people call it Warma Hordes. I just use War Machine as a shorthand for it, and there are about 14 different armies now that you can pick from. For War Machine, it's Khador, Cygnar, Crykes, Menoth are the 4 basic ones. You can do mercenaries. They made Retribution, which is elves. So there's 6. And inside mercenaries are like little sub-armies. So like dwarfs are mercenaries army. So I'm going to call it 7 for War Machine. Hordes is basically the same thing. You have Scorn, Ouroboros, Legion, and Trollbloods. And they haven't come out with a 5th main faction for that, but you do have minions, and minions have little subgroups. The Gatormen, for example, that is an army now, basically. And I'm playing Ren tomorrow, theoretically. So War Machine and Horde's fantastic. Always buy hardback. It's the only way to fly if you're going to do it at all. Next game up is Malifaux. I, quite frankly, did not know much about Malifaux. Yeah, I don't really know anything. The book's got really great art. We had that guy come by that day for a tutorial. Like, look at that. Look how great that is. I think it's like 1 or 2 guys that does all the art for this. So, again, the named characters, the models are a little fiddly, but it is low model count, and it has a really cool feel to it. But the terrain's a little, well, I don't know. It's specialized. So this is a boutique game, definitely. Delicious. Love the smell of a new rulebook. So I wish I could tell you more about Malifaux, but I know that it is well supported, and it's the guys seem to like it. So there's that. Malifaux. All right. So that was 3 out of 5. Now, obviously, I'm going to talk about the 2 heavy hitters. One is Warhammer 40K. So this is a science fiction game. It's set in the grim darkness of the far future. It's sort of a dystopian gothic future thing, you know, kind of like the Dark Ages in space. And in terms of, And this game's been around for at least 25 years, maybe going on 30. And it's extremely well supported, massive range of figures, huge amount of support in terms of tournaments. But that's the thing, with these smaller games, the investment is so low, you really can kind of start it up in your own little group and kind of have everybody pile in for a pretty low barrier to entry. Warhammer 40K is it's pretty easy to learn. You roll lots of dice. It has a feel to it. It has a very aggressive feel to it. Like you can't just play it safe, and like when you play this game, half your army will be gone by the end of the game. It's designed where you have to get out there and you have to sacrifice like whole units just to get to an objective. So yeah, you have to really be ready to get your hands dirty, so to speak. And this is really, really a super game. I've loved it. It's my first game that I played for miniatures battles back, I think it was in '97. I just love it. They've had a lot of time to refine it and make sure it's balanced. For as much tournament scene as there is for this, it's got to be a pretty well balanced game, because every flaw comes out when you're talking mass playing. And it's got enormous amounts of support. It has great pageantry. In terms of models, you're probably looking at a typical army might have 50 infantry and like 4 to 7 vehicles in it, and a couple of heroes peppered in there, and you're pretty much good to go. Transports, you do need the vehicle count will go up because of transports, I think. But generally, and the turbo armies that we do are a great deal for Warhammer 40K, and this is the game that's being played, and that's kind of what you get with this. When you get into 40K, there will be, as in the U.S. especially, there will be other people that play it, and you need that for the investment that you're gonna make in it. It is with that it's easily 2 to 4 times the model count of these other smaller, what are called skirmish games. My favorite miniatures battles game, Dungeons and Dragons. Not 4th Ed so much. I don't know. Maybe I spoke too soon on that. Warhammer Fantasy. Look at this rule book. Wow, that is like an inch and a half. So yeah, Warhammer. So how are the two games different? First off, Warhammer Fantasy. Check to make sure there's a following in your area, because if there's a following, they are probably not likely to go away. Warhammer Fantasy players tend to be a lot more diehard. I love I'd have to say I like Fantasy more than 40K, and it's because of the pageantry. It is just such a super cool game. Like 40K, it's been around 25, 30 years. It has an enormous range behind it. They're currently redoing all the books, and they're in hardback now. The art, in my opinion, is better, and they are just supported so well. There you go. There's your Warhammer Fantasy. Blam. And what they're doing now is every time they come out with a new book, you get a major kit, like a huge kit. So for the Vampire Counts, they got the Coven Throne Mortis Engine dual kit. And then they put out another one. So Games Workshop is just putting out so many awesome figures. It's just wave after wave of mind-blowing eye candy. And quite frankly, I think some of their stuff is more beautiful than Rackham's stuff. That was a French company that went out of business not too long ago. There, look at that. This is just like weapons, like Skaven weapons. And they're just the art, the background, the games. I mean, they have a computer game out for 40K. They had one for Fantasy too. It's just ridiculous amounts of stuff. Some people don't like the new 8th edition rules. I think, you know what? It'll come around. The game is balanced. It's interesting to play. You might say, oh, it's not balanced. Well, guess what? People haven't played it enough to find out where that balance is. And the rules are much better written. But guess what? Be prepared for a money and time investment here. It is, look at that. This is the pageantry aspect that I'm talking about. Giant, 4,000, 10,000 point battles. And so this is a game that you'll be collecting for years. You'll make your army, but you can keep adding to it, and it can just become this absolutely amazing thing, and there's just, yeah, it's what I was saying, it's pageantry. There's a pageantry to it that is really absolutely something special. I love Warhammer Fantasy. You need movement trays for it. Magnetized movement trays really are a must. They're not optional. I'm looking for some art to show you guys, by the way. Yeah, it's all, yeah, and I think that is their selling point. You look through the art in here, and bam, look at that. They're just showing you these giant armies, and there's something really neat about that. Look at that. Masses of ships attacking the High Elf coast. That's just really super cool. The models are awesome. And so that's Warhammer Fantasy. Your model count here, guess what? I'm going to say 100 to 200, and for some armies it's going to be 150 to 300 figures. My Vampire Counts army is just going to bust right through 300 figures, and relatively soon. Of course, I kind of have a painting studio at my disposal. In fact, we could be doing a lot more. And you may notice we're putting out a studio army every 1 to 2 weeks. There's something new coming in, or a refurb at the very least. I got to start showing those off a little bit better. All right. Well, anyway, that's my input on what I'd call the largest 5. Even though percentage-wise, it's probably like in the U.S. maybe 60% 40K, 25% Warhammer Fantasy, and then the rest 15% all the other ones. But those percentage. Tell me what you think the percentages are, because the other games are really gaining steam right now, and I predict it's not going away. And we've been talking about that in the studio, that we are going to be supporting in terms of bat reps and insights and what we're doing overall. We're going to be supporting these other games better, but we have to be careful. We have to pick the games that we really think are the best ones. So the 5 I just put out, I think are the tops. There are other games. I should probably give notable honorable mentions to Dystopian Wars. They're really going somewhere. Who have I missed? Tell me who I missed, and maybe I can talk about those in a future thing. Because yeah, I'm sure there's somebody who I'm just not doing justice. Then there's historicals, which are enormous, and we do nothing for historicals and don't really know that much about them. And quite frankly, I think the science fiction and fantasy stuff is going to overtake the historicals over time. Hold on, what am I missing? My personal history? Oh yeah, let's ramble for longer, shall we? My personal history with miniatures battles is role-playing. I started role-playing in 6th grade. Best thing that ever happened to me. That's how I got educated, was I was writing D&D modules in their entirety by hand. I have stacks of papers. And that's what I was doing in high school, and that's why I got my imagination and my writing and math skills. Thank you, role-playing. And so anyway, I was running a campaign in my home, and there were these 2 guys where once a week, when they were done there, they would go over to the other guy's house and they'd play some mysterious game I didn't know anything about. And one day they brought a couple of white dwarfs over, and I was hooked. It was, I couldn't get enough. It was right about when I think 1st edition Tyranids were coming out. And I just fell in love with 40K. Found some other players. I found about 8 in my area. and they were, I couldn't get enough. But I was self-taught. Originally, I tried gluing my models together with 2-part epoxy glue, where I would actually have to create little scaffoldings around my Tyranids to kind of hold their arms together, because it took all night for the glue to cure. Crazy. Just absolutely insane. And because there wasn't really anything published, I didn't have the internet at the time, so I couldn't find any information on how to do it. So I played Eldar, and my other friend Sean played Space Marines, and they were like camouflage green. And my other friend Aaron, God bless him, he played orcs, and his orcs were the primary colors. Red, yellow, and blue were the colors, and green skin. So they were pretty bright. And then, so then a little while later, they came by and they both had little evil glints in their eyes. And I had kind of started a group. I tend to be the treehouse builder, so I bring people together and start organizing things. And so they came by one day with an evil glint in their eyes, and they said, "We're going to dabble in Warhammer Fantasy." So we picked our armies. Aaron picked Skaven, and Sean picked, I can't remember what it was, orcs, I'm going to guess. And I picked High Elves. So I started with High Elves, and then I moved into Wood Elves, and then Dark Elves. Elves for me. And my 40K armies, my first one was Eldar, and then my second one was Tyranids, and then I did Grey Knights. And Grey Knights were just like a 2-page addendum at the time, and they had maybe 4 models in the range, and they were pewter. So Grey Knights, not the best thing, but they were cool. They were real. The whole concept, I was like, oh, they were really neat. And so, yeah, I started my game shop back in Medford, and that was in the late 90s. Fantastic. And then I became a school teacher, and then eventually I escaped the school teaching thing by painting miniatures in early 2004. And here I am. It's just flown by. So that's kind of my history, a brief history of miniatures battles. With me, I probably played and owned armies for every army that there is out there. I've really done a lot of different stuff. We've certainly seen everything come through here. How many armies have we painted? I don't know. Maybe 600, somewhere between 600 and 900 armies. It's a lot. It's really a lot. Well, anyway, hey, that's your show for the day. I hope you got some inspiration out of it, and I hope you got your inspiration for the day. And yeah, I'll have more studio update tomorrow.